Even though the casket was closed, I couldn't look away. Clara's face, frozen in peace, looked back at me through the glass. The funeral was over, and the crowd had left. I stayed behind, holding the bouquet of lilies we had planted together in our backyard. Someone behind me said, "She hated lilies." I didn't look back. I didn't care. They didn't get it. We had been married for 34 years. 34 years of quiet mornings, coffee together, and talks that often felt like walking on eggshells. She was the kind of woman who smiled to hide her feelings and kept her secrets deeper than the roots of the oak tree in our yard. I loved her a lot, but I never really knew her. Not really. 2 days later, the lawyer called. The phone made a crackling sound like static when he spoke. Mr. Garcia, the estate has been taken care of. There's one last thing to talk about. My throat got tight. We had gone over the will together, which listed her savings, her jewelry, and the condo she had bought for emergencies. But the house was different. The property in the country. He made it clear that it was the one that was in your name. She wanted you to have it. I stopped moving. The home. The one she had told me not to go into for years. The one I had tried to visit once, but the door slammed in my face and I couldn't stop crying. She hissed, "It's not yours," and her voice shook. It never was. That afternoon, the lawyer sent the keys by courier. They came in a plain envelope with a handwritten note inside. Her handwriting was neat and precise, just like everything else about her. The message was just one sentence. "I'm sorry. It's time." I stared at the keys for hours and my hands shook. I told myself to sell it. Set it on fire. Don't bring up the past. But the words kept ringing in my head like a curse. It's time. The house was an hour outside of town, hidden behind a long, winding driveway with tall pines on either side. I knew it right away, even though I had only seen it from the road. The two-story building was an old-fashioned structure with stone walls, sagging eaves, and a wraparound porch that was missing half of its railings. The faded letters on a rusty sign said Montenegro Manor. Montenegro, her last name before she got married. Another secret. I parked the car and sat there watching the orange sunset spread across the sky. The deed I found in Clara's desk drawer years ago said that she bought the place in 1987. She never said why. When I asked, she would tighten her jaw and say, it's complicated, difficult. The word stuck with me. I pushed open the front door and it creaked. There was a smell of dust and old wood in the air, as well as a faint hint of jasmine, her favorite scent. There was only one picture on the walls, and it was crooked. It showed a young Clara, maybe 25, standing in the garden with a man I didn't know. The picture was from 1992, 3 years before we got married. I mumbled, "Luis," as I read the man's name written in the corner. A different name, a different ghost. I walked deeper inside, and my footsteps echoed in the quiet. There was a moth-eaten sofa, a coffee table full of old magazines, and a piano covered in a sheet in the living room. It was like time stood still. Clara played the piano very well. But not here, always at home, where I could hear her. There was a staircase ahead that went up to the second floor. The banister was broken, but I climbed it anyway. The beds were bare, and the bedrooms were empty, as if someone had quickly cleaned them out. I saw a small altar in the master bedroom. It had a candle, a framed picture, and a vase of dried flowers on it. It was a picture of me from our 25th wedding anniversary. She had put it here. A cold breeze blew through the room. I turned to leave, but I couldn't move. There was a loose floorboard on the floor near the bed. I pulled it up and my breath caught. There was a box under it tied with a frayed ribbon. There were letters inside, all of which were addressed to me and postmarked years before we met. Luis Garcia was the name on the first envelope. Hold on, Luis. That wasn't my name. I tripped down the stairs, the letters shaking in my hands. The first letter was from 1990. It started with, "Dear Luis, I'm writing this as if you will find it one day. I know you don't remember me, but I need you to understand. This house is more than just a place. I promise someone I love more than anything else in the world. I can't tell you why right now. Not until the time is right. My knees gave way. Luis," the name on the picture from long ago, the man she loved before me. Another letter from 1992. "Luis, the baby is gone. I held her for 5 minutes before she left us. I couldn't get any air. I couldn't talk. I came here every day to be with her. But now I'm going. I need to begin again. I'm changing my name, moving to a new city, and doing anything else I can to get away from the pain. But I'll always come back here. It's our shrine, a baby, our shrine." My sight got fuzzy. Clara had never talked about a child, Not once. The last letter was written the day before she died. I'm sorry, Louis. I couldn't keep going. The truth was killing me. You own the house now. Head up to the attic. There is everything you need. And Louis, please forgive me for keeping it all from you. The second to last line was written in a hurry, as if she was scared. They're coming. They'll never stop. Please, just don't trust anyone. I ripped up the stairs again and the letters fell out of my hands. The door to the attic was locked, but the key was hanging from my pocket. It was the one the lawyer had sent. The lock made a metal groan as it opened. There was only one window in the attic, so it was dark. I fumbled for the flashlight on my phone, and the beam lit up a room that looked like it had been frozen in time. A bed for a child, a pile of toys, and a dresser full of diaries. And on the wall farthest away, there was a colorful mural of a family. A man, a woman, and a little girl all smiled under a sign that said, "Happy birthday, Sophia." Sophia, my daughter. I let out a sob. Clara had a baby. A girl. And I had no idea. I fell to the dusty floor, and the pieces fell into place. The hiddenness. She had named the house Montenegro Manor. Louis, the man in the picture, was her first husband, a husband who had died in 1992, according to the obituaries I read a long time ago, and Sophia, my niece, No, the dates didn't make sense. The letters were sent to a Louis who lived before we got married, before her name changed to Clara Garcia, before me. The effects bothered me. What did she think of me? A new beginning, a new love to take the place of the one that had died with Louis. And why has she kept the truth so well hidden? I couldn't move, but the answer was in the attic. The lies, the grief she had to deal with alone, and the loss of her daughter all weighed me down. I was so mad at how cold she was, so angry at her walls. But I can see it now. She wasn't chilly. She was hurt. I left the house at midnight with the letters stuffed into my coat. The drive back seemed to last forever, with each mile taking me deeper into the void. I saw her journal on the kitchen table when I got home. It was the one she kept next to her bed. She had given it to me. The last entry was written the night before she died. They found me. The people who took Sophia, they've been keeping an eye on things. I can't keep him safe anymore. He now owns the house. Tell him the truth. Tell him I loved him even when I couldn't say it. Even when I was scared, the word, them, stuck with me. Who are they and why did they take her child? I opened the laptop and my hands steadied as fear gave way to determination. I put Montenegro Manor in the search box. The first thing that came up was a news story from 1992 called Local Couples Tragic Lost Shakes Community. The picture showed Clara and Louis with their arms around a small coffin. The caption said, Sophia Montenegro, 3 months old, died in a strange way. The authorities called it a sudden infant death, but the family thinks something bad happened. The second article, which was hidden in a gossip blog from 2005, talked about a secret group that was said to be taking kids from rich families. It called them the Black Ravens. A group. Clara had never said anything about any of this. Not the death, not the cult, not the guilt that must have eaten her alive. I fell onto the couch, and the letters and journal were all around me like old things. I was lost in the truth, which was a maze. I did know one thing, though the house wasn't just a house. It was a jail, a safe place, a grave. And whatever Clara had hidden there would change everything I thought I knew about my wife, my life, and the secrets we keep to stay alive. At 2 a.m., the phone rang. I answered even though I didn't know the number. A voice said, "You shouldn't have gone to the house. No, you know too much." I hung up and my blood froze. Finally, the game was starting. I kept hearing the phone call in my head all night. You shouldn't have gone to the house. The warning was clear, even though the voice was distorted. By morning, I was back at Montenegro Manor with a flashlight and a determination I didn't know I had. There were more secrets in the attic. I found a leather bag full of Sophia's things, a small dress, a pacifier, and a photo album under the child's bed. There was a note on the last page that said, "For Louis, I'm sorry I couldn't keep her safe." But when I opened the door to the basement, I was really shocked. A staircase went down into the dark, and the steps were broken and wobbly. The light on my phone shook as I went down, and the air smelled like mold. There was a locked iron door at the bottom with a raven's head and 2 snakes on either side of it. I had seen the symbol on a gossip blog, the Black Raven's badge. I pushed the door open with my shoulder. There was a room inside full of files, pictures, and a journal that was written weeks before Clara died. Her entries got more and more desperate. They've been here. The ravens, they know I found the proof. The baby's medical records were fake. Somebody killed Sophia. Not an accident. I have to keep the truth from coming out. Lose his name. They want to get anyone who knows him. Another note written quickly says, the house is a trap. They'll also come for the husband. Tell him to run. My hands were shaking. The man who is married. She had never called me that before. In her eyes, I was just another stranger in a world full of lies. The files showed that there was a cover-up. Louis had been an investigative journalist looking into what the Ravens were up to. His death in a car accident in 1992 was strange because there was no wreckage or witnesses. What about Sophia? Her death certificate said, I'll say DS, but a secret report from a whistleblower doctor said something else. Infant showed signs of poison. The parents didn't want an autopsy. To protect me, Clara had buried the truth. At least that's what I thought. A noise from above made me stop. Steps, heavy and slow. My heart was racing as I ran up the stairs. The door to the front was open. I was there. I called, and my voice was steadier than I felt. Be quiet. I walked into the living room and stopped. A person stood in the doorway, their back to the moonlight. He was tall and wore a long black trench coat. The raven symbol shone on the lapel. The stranger held up a framed picture of a newborn Sophia in Clara's arms and asked, Are you looking for this? Who are you? I said, Someone who wants what's theirs. They said, their voice cold as ice. I lunged for the kitchen and grabbed a knife off the counter. The stranger moved faster and got in my way. You shouldn't have opened that door, they hissed. The ravens don't forgive people who are curious. There was a fight. I swung the knife at them, but they ducked, and the knife hit the ground with a loud clang. A needle suddenly stuck into my neck. The room turned. They whispered, Good night, Mr. Garcia. The truth dies with you. I woke up in a cold room with no windows. There was only one light bulb above me that flickered. There was a poster of the Black Raven's symbol on the wall. The door creaked open. Why did you bring me here? I yelled, fighting against the ropes. A woman came in. She was a raven with sharp eyes behind wire, frame glasses. You aren't the first to look into Clara's past. She said, but you're the first to find out the truth. Real truth. She threw a folder on the table. There were pictures of Clara at protests, meetings with activists, and a newspaper article from 2003 that said, Montenegro widow donates millions to children's shelter. She wasn't just Luz's wife, the woman said. We were enemies with her. For decades, the ravens sold babies. Lewis told us we made him quiet, but Clara kept going. She hid proof of who we are in this house. And now, you know, her smile became mean. But you won't be able to tell anyone. I pretended to agree by nodding as she went over their plans. The ravens had gotten into governments, businesses, and even charities. Clara's shelter was a front for getting kids into their network. You think she was a victim. The woman laughed. She helped us until she found Sophia's corpse. After that, she turned on us. But we always knew she'd come back here. The house was a trap. My head was spinning. Was Clara a traitor? The woman went to get a needle. I lunged for the folder and ripped out a picture of Clara with a raven leader. It was from 1998. Years after Louise died, I confronted her when she got back. She wasn't on your side. She was your informant. You killed Louise to get her to stop talking. But she kept fighting, and you're worried about what I'll find out. The raven stopped moving. You look smarter than you are. I said, I'm also stubborn, and kicked the table over. The bowl broke, and we were in the dark. We fought without thinking, till I hit her head against the wall. She fell to the ground, unconscious. I ran away, following the sound of water dripping to a vent. The woods were big outside. I ran until I got to the highway, where I called a cab. I looked through the files at home, and my blood boiled. There were real ravens, and they had tricked Clara into betraying them, or had she tricked them? The phone rang again. The same distorted voice said, You're running out of time. I called the number Clara had hidden in her journal, which was marked as Safe House. A man answered after 3 rings. Who is this? Clara sent me. You are someone she could trust. Tell me the truth. Be quiet. Then, in a low voice, she didn't trust anyone, but I had faith in her. Be at the docks at midnight. Bring the files. I thought about it, but the other choice was death. I got on a ferry to the empty dockyard at midnight. As I waited, fog hung over the water. A man in his 60s with a sad face came out. I realized, You're Luz's brother. Yes, he said. And you're the guy who married my sister-in-law. She was Luz's sister. No, she was married to him, and she loved him until the day she died. The truth hit me hard. Louise and Clara had never gotten a divorce. She brought his name, his sadness, and his secrets into our marriage. She put the proof here, the man said, pointing to some boxes of papers. Proof that the Ravens sold hundreds of kids. Sophia is one of them. They killed her to keep Louis quiet. Clara tried to tell the truth about them, but they made her look like a traitor. She had to deal with both the guilt and the Ravens' threats. So why did you send me here? To finish what she started. The Ravens will get the files. You have to let them out to the press, to the cops. Now, the horn on the ferry went off. In the fog behind us, shadows moved. The man said, "They're here. Go. Get the files. I'll keep them away." I ran as fast as I could, holding the proof. As I got to the ferry, bullets flew by. The man fell and yelled, "Tell Clara I'm proud of her." When I got home, I put the files on a secure server. The Ravens would be in danger. Clara's name would be cleared. But the wind didn't feel good. For all those years, I had been a ghost in her life and a stranger in her marriage. And now I knew why. The phone rang again. The voice said, "Congratulations. You just signed your own death warrant." I unplugged the phone and called the police. I opened Clara's last journal entry while I waited. "Please forgive me for the lies. Louis, I loved you. I will always do that. Keep the file safe. Keep the truth safe. Louis." Not my name. The door flew open. I stopped moving, phone still in hand. The shadow filled the frame. It was a tall, broad-shouldered person in a raven's trench coat. The symbol on their lapel shone softly in the dark. "Are you looking for a hero's welcome?" I teased them as I backed up to the kitchen. The raven grinned. "You think it matters to upload those files? The Ravens are in charge of the police and the press. Your proof is useless." They lunged. I stepped to the side, grabbed a vase from the mantel and smashed it over their heads. They staggered, but got back on their feet faster than I thought they would and slammed me against the wall. "You'll die here?" They hissed, holding a knife that shone the light, just like Clara. The words hit like a bullet. "Just like Clara? What did you do to her?" I gasped and elbowed them in the ribs. They laughed and it sounded like stone grinding. "She died for you, you idiot." "The cancer." "It's a lie. We poisoned her a few months ago. She was in pain for her last days. She begged us to let her go, but we made her watch." "Watch what?" The Ravens needed an edge. "We showed her video of your funeral, though they put the knife against my throat." She screamed until she bled. The room turned. Clara's last few weeks, when she lost weight quickly and cried for no reason at night. Not cancer. Toxic. My phone buzzing on the counter was a distraction. The Raven looked away, and I took the chance to headbutt their nose. As I pulled away, blood sprayed everywhere, and I grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer. We fought with steel and curses until the Raven threw me against the stove. The knife fell to the ground. They said, "Pathetic." Then I saw a framed picture on the fridge that had been taken during the fight. Clara's smile, which was taken days before she died. I kicked it in the Raven's face. They pulled back, and I lunged for the knife and stabbed them in the shoulder. They screamed and fell down. "Run," they said, "but the Ravens always win." I ran away into the night with the files burning in my pocket. The Ravens had lied about Clara's death, but why let me live? To bring the files myself, I learned the truth at the docks. Clara hadn't just told the Ravens the truth. She had gotten inside and given them false information to keep kids safe. But she changed her mind after she found out about Sophia's murder. They made her look like a traitor to ruin her name, to keep her alone. I was homeless and being hunted, so I stayed in a motel. The files were the only thing I had to fight with. I had sent them to the police, but the Ravens had warned me that the system was theirs. I had to come up with a new plan. There was one last entry in Clara's journal, which was hidden in a recipe book. Louise, if you're reading this, they found you. I can't tell you everything yet, but believe me when I say that the Ravens are getting ready to do something worse than trafficking. A final project. I have seen their plans for a building in the mountains. They're making a jail for kids they've taken. Louis, get rid of it. Set it on fire, and tell Sophia's story. Tell everyone that I loved her. Victor Hale was a name that stood out in the files. A billionaire who gives money to charities. Ravens back her. That night there was a gala at his mansion, which was the perfect time to plant evidence. I called the cops again. There's a jail for kids in the Rocky Mountains. It belongs to Victor Hale. Stop him. Be quiet. Then a voice I knew said, "Do you still think you're a hero?" The Ravens had broken into my call. I snuck into the gala by pretending to be staff. The mansion was full of art and greed. Children are assets. Hale's voice echoed through the hall. Things that need to be taken care of. I found the blueprints in his office. They showed a huge underground complex with holding cells, labs, and a room called Project Dawn. The police closed in. I set off a fire alarm and ran toward the entrance of the building. A guard tackled me, but I fought back with a bottle of champagne. Inside the building, the horrors grew. Worsy kids in cages with wires tied to their wrists. A boy said softly, "She's here. They are keeping her alive for the test." What did Clara do? There was a door that went to a lab. There was a teenager strapped to a table. He was pale, scared, and had Clara's eyes. I said, "Sophia." The Raven leader said from the shadows, "No, this is Project Dawn, a copy. The real Sophia passed away many years ago, but we have made her DNA perfect. Picture a perfect army of kids for the highest bidder." The leader moved forward with a syringe in hand. "Mr. Garcia, let's finish what we started." I lunged and pushed a desk lamp into his chest. He tripped and I ran, pulling Sophia with me. "Run." I yelled, "Look for Clara's shelter. Tell them." Alarms went off. Gunfire rang out. The Ravens trapped us in a warehouse. The leader smiled and held up a bottle of clear liquid. "This is what we gave Clara, a poison that works slowly. But you'll get it quickly." Sophia yelled. I lunged again and knocked the leader into a crate of chemicals. A blast went off and the room was filled with fire. I woke up in a hospital and the smoke was still hurting my lungs. A nurse said that the Ravens building was ruined. Sophia was safe in foster care. But it was still not clear what would happen to Clara. Weeks later, I stood at her grave, which had the Ravens symbol painted in red. A letter slipped into my pocket, a Raven's message that the police got. The clone is alive. Clara's memory lives on. They'll come for you. I smiled sadly. Let them come. A child's laughter woke me up. The hospital room was empty, but the memory of the sound that was so much like Clara's and Sophia's broke me. The copy. The last message from the Ravens was clear. They'll come for you. And they would do it. But first, I needed to know. Sophia lived in a quiet cottage on the edge of town with her foster family. She sat by the window, tracing Clara's face in an old picture. When I came in, she whispered, "You're not her. I am Luis," I said as I knelt down next to her, Clara's friend. She pulled back. She said my real name was Isabel, that I wasn't her child. She lied to keep you safe. Isabel squinted. Why should I believe you? I couldn't answer because sirens were going off outside. A black van came to a screeching stop. Ravens. Isabel held my hand tightly as we ran into the woods. "They're gonna kill us," she yelled. "I promise they won't hurt you," I said. "I'll die first." A shot rang out. A bullet grazed Isabel's arm and she screamed and fell. I pulled her behind a tree and my heart raced. I said, "The lab, Clara has hidden it somewhere. If we can locate it." We got to an empty warehouse that Clara had written about in her journal. A keypad lit up next to a steel door on the inside. Isabel said her password was always Sophia. The door opened and a high-tech lab was inside. There are files, vials, and a holographic map of the Ravens building, a folder called Project Dawn, pulsed on a terminal. Isabel hacked into the system, and her speed was scary. She taught me. She said, "Isabel, you're more than a clone." She'd say every night, "You're a weapon." There was a video in the folder of Clara tied up, giving herself the same serum that the Ravens used on Isabel. "This is the last experiment," Clara said, her voice shaking. "The serum connects DNA with memories. If I die, Isabel will still have my mind. Keep her safe. Keep the truth safe. The screen went black. There was a noise downstairs. Ravens. Isabel's eyes got bigger. They're here? I protected her as boots thudded up the stairs. With a syringe in hand, the leader stood in the door. Come quietly, and I won't hurt the clone. Don't bother her, I yelled. He laughed. Do you think this is about her? The serum is already in her body. She'll be a great host for Clara's mind. And when Clara wakes up, he smiled. You'll be the one asking for mercy. Isabel lunged at him and tackled him. We fought in a whirlwind of swearing and flailing limbs until she stabbed him in the neck with a needle. He fell apart, mumbling, the others, they'll finish what we started. Isabel looked at Clara's picture again when she got back to the cottage. Why did she hate me? She didn't. She cared about you enough to keep you safe from monsters. But I'm not her daughter. You're her hope. And now you're my family. She smiled a little. Can I call you Dad? The word hit hard. Dad? To a kid who wasn't mine. To a legacy I didn't deserve. Days went by. Isabel got used to normal life, which included school, crayons, and bedtime stories. But she had a lot of bad dreams. They're coming, she'd say in a low voice. In my dreams, they scream, the serum isn't stable. Clara's mind is getting worse. We need a host. The leader of the Ravens had a backup. According to the lab's plans, there will be a facility in the mountains. I drove there at night with Isabel sleeping in the back seat. The compound was smaller than it had been before. It was now a cabin with barbed wire around it. There was a computer screen inside that said, Clara's consciousness is dropping by 7% per hour. Isabel gasped. They're taking her mind. Like a body part. We destroyed the servers, but one last file appeared. Project Dawn Phase 20 Global Implementation. A hidden speaker echoed Clara's voice. The serum can be made in large quantities. If the Ravens let it go, they'll turn human DNA into a weapon. Louise, I'm sorry. Finish what I couldn't. Isabel got worse when she got home. Her eyes glazed over and she whispered in a voice that wasn't hers, Oh, Louise, the serum isn't working. I'm falling. Clara, I begged. Isabel whispered, yes, but not for long. The Ravens struck again. Isabel fought with unnatural strength, but the leader was too strong for her. She's gonna die, Louise. Clara is gone for good if she doesn't get a new host. I growled, you'll never get her. Then you'll lose both her and your clone. I looked into Isabel's eyes. Do it. She said, let her live, please. The leader had a needle. The serum needs a way to get around. You will do. The shot hurt. Clara's memories flooded my mind. The Raven's tree. Luce's brother died. I was a stranger in her life. Clara's voice kept saying, she loved you? Please forgive me. I woke up in a Raven's van, tied up and blindfolded. Isabel was sleeping next to me. Where are we? I asked the driver. To the source of Project Dawn, he said. The first serum, the blood of Clara. The place was a cave under a mountain that was lit up by strange blue lights. There were rows of vats full of glowing liquid that was Clara's DNA copied. The leader was at a control panel. The serum is ready. With Clara's mind on Isabel and yours, we'll make an army. Isabel lunged, but two Ravens stopped her. I fought, but a needle went into my neck. Clara's memories made the world disappear. I'm so sorry, Louise, she said softly. I couldn't tell you the truth, not until now. I woke up in a vat with my hands tied. Isabel stood next to me, her eyes shining. The leader said, it's done. You both have the serum in you. Phase 2 starts now. Isabel's voice was no longer her own. She said, in a cold, mechanical voice, the Ravens have 10,000 candidates. They'll give them all shots. Resistance is useless. I yelled Clara's name. Oh, I'm here, she said, her voice weak. In the serum, Louise, fight it. Set fire to the building. Burn it all. I broke free by smashing vats with a fire extinguisher. Fire broke out and burned down the lab. The leader lunged, but Clara pushed Isabel into the flames. Go, she said softly, before it's too late. We ran away when the cave fell down. Isabel's eyes went back to being brown. She's gone? She said. The serum is fading. Isabel slept well at home. The raven's threat was stopped, but Clara's legacy lived on in her. I looked at her journal one last time. Louis, thank you for reading this, for putting love ahead of the truth, for giving Sophia a family, and for letting me go. The house stood alone in the dark, its shape clear against the sky that was getting darker. I didn't plan to come back so soon, but Isabel's words stuck with me. She left something for you in the piano. The floorboards creaked under my weight like old bones as I walked in. Dust was in the air, catching the last rays of the sun. It felt like the house was holding its breath, waiting for me to find out what Clara had buried. Everything felt heavier now. I knelt next to the piano, which she had never let me play. The wood was worn smooth from years of use that no one could see. I pulled up a loose board near the leg, and my fingers touched something cold and metal, a door that leads to a trap. The stairs went down into the dark. The flashlight on my phone turned on, and I saw a small room with shelves full of journals, pictures, and glass vials filled with a liquid that glowed faintly. A desk was in the middle of the room, and on it was an envelope with my name written in Clara's neat handwriting. I was shaking as I opened it. Louise, if you read this, then I have failed. The leader of the Ravens is more than just a man. He is the first success of Project Dawn. After Sophia died, the state of art's in my DNA. He doesn't my DNA. He doesn't get old. He doesn't bleed like we do. He will always be looking for you. You can only kill him with the serum. But if you inject it, my memories, my voice, and my soul will all become one with yours. You will carry me with you forever. I looked up with my heart racing. That's when I heard the soft creak of the trapdoor above me opening. Isabel was at the top of the stairs and her face was pale. They're here, she said quietly. The front door broke before I could say anything. They came like ghosts, wearing trench coats, black gloves, and dark glasses to hide their eyes. And in the middle of it all, him. The person in charge of the Ravens, he was tall and thin, and his skin was too tight over his sharp bones. In the dim light, his eyes glowed a soft gold. He said, Alois Garcia, in a smooth, almost kind voice. Clara always said you would be the one to finish this. Isabel got in front of me. Stay back. He laughed. You think you're keeping him safe. You're just a copy, kid. An experiment that didn't work. He moved faster than I could see. He was at the door 1 second, and the next he had Isabel by the throat and was slamming her against the wall. Clara's mind is fading in you, he said in a low voice. He looked at me. Your DNA is clean, not touched. You could make her whole again. I lunged for the bottle on the desk. He kicked it out of my hand. It broke, and the serum spilled out onto the stone floor like liquid starlight. Isabel screamed, but it wasn't her voice. Her eyes turned gold, and she threw the leader back with a force I couldn't explain. He hit the shelves, and glass vials broke all around him. Clara's power, I said out loud, it's waking up in her. The leader got up slowly with blood dripping from his lip. Too late, he said. Now her mind is mine, and soon yours will be too. I could hear Clara's voice clearly in my head, as if she were right next to me. The house holds the truth. Look for it. I ran up the stairs with my mind racing. The attic, the painting on the wall, a painting for Sophia's birthday. I had stared at it for hours after I first found it, but now I saw what I had missed. The brushstrokes weren't random. They made symbols, coordinates. A map. There was a small metal box behind a loose panel under the mural. There was a video file inside called Victor Hale, 1989. I played it on my phone. Victor Hale younger, standing in a clean lab. He smiled coldly and said, Project Dawn was never about kids, was about living forever. Clara's DNA was the key. It gave her the power to heal, remember, and grow new cells. But she wouldn't help. We only took what was most important. The screen changed to blurry video of ravens breaking into a nursery. Sophia, a baby, cried as a needle went through her tiny arm. Hale went on. We made her suffer, and Clara fell apart. She became useful at that point. I ran back down the stairs. The leader had Isabel pinned down with his hands around her neck. That's enough? I yelled. He turned, and I didn't think twice. I took a piece of broken vial and stabbed into my own neck. I was in a lot of pain. Fire in my blood. I remembered Clara's funeral, Sophia's last breath, and the nights she cried alone in this house. But also love. So much love. Clara whispered to me, "You're stronger now." Use my strength. I put my hand up. It looked like an invisible force hit the leader and made him fly back. Isabel joined me, her eyes blazing, and we let everything we had out. Light, heat, and raw emotion came out of us like a storm. The leader screamed as his body started to break down and turn to ash. There was silence. Isabel fell into my arms, her breathing heavy. The sky outside was painted in soft pinks and golds as dawn broke over the hills. I found one last thing in the secret room, a locket that was hidden under the desk. There was a photo of Clara and Luis and a note inside. "Please forgive me for the lies. I love you both. You now own this house. Make it a home." Weeks went by. Isabel still had bad dreams, but Clara's voice didn't bother her anymore. When she smiled, it was sometimes Clara's smile, but it was also hers. "You're not a copy," I told her one night as we sat on the porch. "You're her legacy. And mine too." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Do you think she's at peace?" I looked out at the garden, where the cold didn't stop the lilies from blooming. I believe she is finally free. And at that moment, I swear I felt her, a whisper in the wind and a warmth in the air. The house was no longer a place where secrets were kept. It was a house. And for the first time in a long time, I was too. The house now had a heartbeat, not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind you feel in your bones. The slow creak of floorboards like a sigh, and the soft sound of wind through broken window panes like a lullaby. For so long, I hated this place because it kept Clara and me apart. But now, as I stood in the overgrown garden where she used to plant lilies that wouldn't die, I finally got it. The house wasn't a jail, it was a safe place. A living record of every tear she shed, every secret she kept, and every love she lost and found again. I found the locket on a rainy afternoon, half buried in the roots of an old oak tree. The silver surface was dull, and the chain was twisted like a promise that had been broken. With shaking hands, I opened it. There was a hidden compartment inside that I had never seen before, next to the old pictures of Clara and Luis, her first love and first heartbreak. A microchip, which is about the size of a grain of rice, was hidden in velvet. Isabel stood on the porch with her arms crossed to keep warm. Since the leader of the Ravens fell apart in that underground room, she had been quieter. Less noise, but more strength. Not a copy, but a girl had finally found her own name. She asked, "What is it?" When I brought the locket inside, I put the chip into my laptop. Files appeared all over the screen. They were encrypted, but Isabel broke them in minutes. There were names, addresses, and bank account numbers, a complete file on the Ravens network even after their leader died. But one folder stood out. It was just called "For Luis Alone." My throat got tight. By now, I knew that Clara's alone messages were never just for me. They were signs to be careful, telling the truth. Last wishes. Isabel put her hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to see it." But I did. The hidden room under the piano was where the video started. I remembered Clara's face being thinner than it was now, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She had on the same sweater she had on the day she died, or the day she pretended to die. I still didn't know which was true. "Luis," she said, and her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "If you see this, then the worst has already happened. The serum has gotten away, and if it has, then people are already changing." She leaned forward, and her eyes met the camera as if she could see me through time. The serum wasn't just about living forever. It was about having power. The Ravens wanted to change DNA so that people would be perfect, obedient, and compliant. But they were wrong. The serum doesn't take away free will. It makes feeling stronger, love, anger, sadness. And in the wrong hands, she stopped talking and looked over her shoulder as if someone were listening. "Isabel has the purest strain. She is the key to stopping it. But she will have to make a choice. Use the power or destroy it. Then her voice cracked. I never wanted her to be scared. That's why I gave you this. The screen changed to a map of Montenegro Manor. There were dates on the labels for each room, not names. Sofia took her last breath on October 12, 1992. Luis's funeral was on March 3, 1995. Luis Garcia and I met for the first time on June 18, 2001. My name, my life, like a second skin, this house's bones are woven together. Clara whispered, the mural in the attic isn't just a painting. It's a map. Look at Sofia's eyes. They'll show you the truth. That night, we went up to the attic. The broken window let in moonlight that lit up Sofia's face in the mural. The gold leaf on her eyes made it look like they were following us as we moved. Isabel drew the shape of Sofia's iris. She whispered, there's something here. Coordinates were carved into the plaster under the paint. A lot of them. GPS points all over the country. I realized it was every Ravens building. They took every child. We were on the road for the next 3 months. Nevada has empty warehouses. West Virginia has labs underground. A charity school in Maine that was really a place to keep stolen kids. We found proof at each site, medical records, vials of serum, and scared kids who had been used in experiments. And with each rescue, Clara's voice got louder in my head. Not like a ghost, but like a compass. She'd whisper, turn left here, look in the basement. It felt like the serum in my blood had made a bridge between us that was weak, but unbreakable. The last coordinate took us to Victor Hale's house. There was nothing there but dust and silence. But a woman was waiting in the library. She was standing by the fireplace with her back to us, wearing a black dress that looked like Clara's. I froze when she turned. Her eyes. The way she smiled, it was Clara, even the way she tilted her head. But it wasn't. Isabel said, Elena, Victor's sister, the last living heir of the Ravens. Elena said, you think you've won? Her voice smooth as poison. But the water supply already has the serum. In the sky. In every child born this year. Luis, you can't stop evolution. She lunged and a syringe flashed in her hand. Isabel pushed me out of the way, but the needle touched her arm. We ran, and Elena's laughter followed us into the night. She yelled after us, it's spreading, and you can't save them all. Isabel's arm was red when she got home. It's getting faster, she said, her voice tight with pain. The serum is changing my DNA faster than it used to. I found Clara's last journal entry hidden in the locket. If the serum gets out into the world, there is only one way to stop it. There is a neutralizing agent in the vial in the locket. It will get rid of every trace of the serum, even the part that is in your blood. But it will also permanently erase my memory from your mind. You won't remember my voice, my thoughts. Me, Luis, pick a Clara's ghost or the future of humanity. I looked at the tiny, clear vial that was hidden in the velvet of the locket. Isabel put a hand on mine. Do it. But you'll lose her too, I said. Her help, her love. Isabel said softly, I already have her over here. She hit her chest, not in a serum, in my heart. I poured the neutralizing agent into the well that Clara used to water her lilies. The liquid hissed when it hit the water and glowed blue for a short time before fading. I felt dizzy all of a sudden. For months, Clara's voice was always there. Then it started to fade like a radio signal. She whispered one last time, thank you, because you love me enough to let me go. Luis, keep her safe. Always, then nothing. Isabel's eyes went back to their normal brown color. There was no more gold. The serum took away her powers, which were Clara's gift. But she didn't shed a tear. She grinned. That's fine, she said. I don't need magic to be her daughter. We found Clara's last gift, a time capsule in the basement under a loose brick. There was a video of her and Luis dancing and laughing in this garden on their wedding day. Clara, who was younger and full of joy, said to whoever finds this, love isn't about knowing everything. It's about deciding to let go of the lies, to take someone's broken pieces and say, I'll carry them with you. She looked right at the camera like she knew I would be watching it decades later. Thank you for carrying mine, Luis Garcia. That was a long time ago. The house is still there, and its heart is still beating. Isabel now lives here and takes care of the garden where lilies and roses grow next to each other. She works at the shelter that Clara started and tells every child who comes in about Sophia. On some quiet nights, I sit on the porch and swear I can hear Clara's laugh in the wind, not as a spirit, not as a memory, but as a promise that love never really dies, even when it's buried under years of secrets. It just sits there. For someone who is brave enough to dig it up. I found it by chance. 3 months after the Ravens leader turned to ash, I was cleaning out the attic. I was going through boxes of Clara's old things to see what I wanted to keep and what I could get rid of. Isabel had begun school in town, and the house felt quieter and emptier, as if it were finally learning how to breathe without ghosts. That's when I saw it, a little wooden box hidden behind the leg of Sophia's old crib. It wasn't locked, it was just tied with a faded blue ribbon, the same one Clara used to tie her hair back in the summer. There was a pile of letters inside. All of them were sent to me. None of them sent. The first one was sent only 2 weeks after we got married. It started with, "Dear Louise," and then it said, "I keep waiting for you to ask about the house. About why I get nervous when people talk about kids. About why I don't talk about my life before you. But you don't. You just hold me when I cry and don't ask why." That's the most thoughtful thing anyone has ever done for me, and the most hurtful, because I don't deserve you to be quiet. Your anger is deserved. My hands shook as I flipped the page. Sophia wasn't just my kid. She was my love. And when they took her away from me and let her die to punish Luis for looking too deeply, I stopped believing in goodness. Then I saw you. You smiled at me in that coffee shop like you wanted to get to know me. I lied to you from the first. Hello, the letters were written over many years, one from 1980. You asked if I wanted kids. I almost told you the truth. But how do you explain that your womb is a graveyard? Another from 2005A. Today I saw a little girl with Sophia's eyes. I followed her for 3 blocks before I realized what I was doing. Luis, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And one from last year, just a few months before she died, they found me again. The Ravens. They say they'll come for you if I don't give them the serum data. So I've decided what to do. I'll let them believe I'm still loyal. I'll go along with what they want. And when the time comes, I'll make sure you never find out the truth. You gave me something I thought I had lost forever, peace. Even if it's based on lies. I sat on the attic floor for hours, reading every word and feeling like I was meeting Clara for the first time. I thought she was cold all those years. Far away. Cautious. She wasn't trying to hide from me. She was trying to keep me safe. Because she was sad. Because she felt bad. From the monsters that never stopped looking for her. I showed Isabel the letters that night. She read them in silence, with tears streaming down her face. She looked up at me when she was done, her voice barely a whisper. She loved you, she said. Not because you were Luis Garcia, but you let her be broken and still called her whole. The next morning, we buried the letters in the garden under the lilies, not because we wanted to forget, but because some truths are too heavy to keep forever. As I shoveled the dirt, I felt something change inside me. It wasn't closure, but it was acceptance. Clara wasn't perfect. She was lying. She went into hiding. She let me go through life without seeing, but she kept choosing me even when she thought she didn't deserve it. And maybe that was all it took. That week, a package came with no address to send it back to. There was a note and a key inside. The safe house in Vermont. There is everything she left behind. Elena, the sister of Victor Hale, the last Raven. Isabel wanted to leave right away, but I wasn't sure. What if it's a trick? Isabel said softly, "She's not like them. She helped us." Do you remember? Yes, I did. Elena sent us warnings in the last days, anonymous tips that saved us more than once. She might have been watching Clara the whole time. In her own messed up way, maybe she loved her too. The safe house was a small cabin in the woods, surrounded by pine trees and quiet. The air inside smelled like cedar and old paper. Maps, photos, and newspaper clippings covered every wall. Clara's war room. In the middle of the table was a last journal. It was thicker than the others and had drawings of kids' faces, names, and birth dates on its pages. She wrote on the first page, "These are the ones they took. I couldn't help Sophia, but I'll help them." A red circle around the list of names at the back. Found safe. Free more than 200 names. Clara had saved 200 lives from the dark. I found a picture in a drawer that I had never seen before. Clara, who is younger, is standing next to a little girl with dark curls and bright eyes. In her own handwriting on the back, it says, "Sophia, age 3, she laughed on the last day." But Sophia had died when she was 3 months old. Unless I couldn't breathe. What is it? Isabel wanted to know. I gave her the picture. This can't be real? But it was, because there was a birth certificate hidden underneath it. Sofia Montenegro is her name, born on March 14th, 1989. Date of death, June 22nd, 1992. She had lived for 3 years, and Clara had never told anyone. We were quiet for a long time. Then Isabel spoke, and her voice was steady. She couldn't stand to say it out loud. It would become real if she did. And if it was real, she would have to deal with the fact that she didn't protect her. I nodded, and my eyes were burning with tears. I always thought Clara's secret had something to do with death, but it was about living, about the 3 years she spent with her daughter. The laughter, the stories before bed, the knees that are scraped and the fingers that are sticky, the unbearable happiness of loving someone you know you'll lose. That night, we left the cabin with the journal safely tucked away in my bag. Isabel stared out the window on the way home, her hand resting on the picture of Sophia. "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" she asked in a soft voice. I reached over and held her hand. "Isabel didn't just leave you her DNA, she gave you her strength, her heart. Her battle." I stopped and looked at the road ahead. "Yes. She would be more proud of you than anyone else in the world." I dreamed about Clara that night for the first time in years. Not as a spirit, not a secret. But as a woman stood in a garden full of sunlight, holding a little girl's hand and smiling at me like I was finally home. The house was quiet when I woke up. But it didn't feel empty anymore, because some loves last even after death. They just learn new ways to stay. That year, spring came quietly, not with a lot of noise, but with the slow growth of green shoots through the frost from last winter. I had started taking care of Clara's garden again. I pulled weeds, turned the soil, and planted seeds she had saved in old envelopes with her neat handwriting on them. Forget-me-nots are Sophia's favorite. Lavender, so you can sleep well at night. Roses, because beauty lasts. Isabel came with me most mornings. Her hands in the dirt, her silence was now comfortable, not heavy. We didn't talk much about the letters, the cabin, or the truth about Sophia's 3 years. Some wounds heal better when they are alone. But one afternoon, while we were trimming the rose bushes, she stopped and stared at me. "What if we open it?" she said. "The shelter." She nodded. "Clara made it to hide kids. But what if we use it to help them get better instead?" I hadn't thought about it before. The old stone building at the edge of the property had been empty for years. It used to be a safe house for ravens, and then Clara's secret hideout. But Isabel was correct. It didn't have to be a scary place. It could be a place to start. For weeks, we cleaned, painted, and turned cold rooms into warm ones. Isabel made a playroom with pictures of trees and stars on the walls. I made bookshelves out of wood that I found. We put up pictures of the kids she had saved, not Clara or Sophia, the names of them, their tales. A social worker brought their first child to us on the day we opened. He was an 8-year-old boy named Mateo with eyes that looked too old for his face. He didn't say much, but when he saw the mural in the playroom, he pointed to a painted bird and said, "That one is free." Isabel got down on her knees next to him. "Yes, all of them." She asked, Do you ever wonder what Clara would say if she saw this while they were eating soup in the kitchen that night? I slowly moved my spoon around. I think she would cry, not because she was sad, but because she was happy. She spent her whole life running, hiding, and fighting. But this is peace. Isabel grinned. Then we're doing it right. But I was learning that peace is not strong. A week later, a man showed up at the gate. In his late 50s, with gray hair at the temples and a worn leather jacket. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there and stared at the house like it was haunted. I went out to the porch. How can I help you? He looked up and his eyes were red. I knew Clara Montenegro. I became very cautious right away. When? Before Luis passed away. Before all of this, he had a hard time swallowing. I was her brother. He was called Daniel. Clara's younger brother, who she hadn't spoken to in years because he wouldn't help her look into Sophia's death. He said, sitting at our kitchen table with his hands around a cup of tea, I thought she was paranoid. I told her to go on, begin again. And she did, with you. He then looked at me closely. Years ago, she wrote to me. She said she had met someone nice, someone who didn't ask questions. I never answered. His voice broke. I was embarrassed. Isabel brought him a plate of cookies that Clara had made. He took one and his fingers shook. She used to make these for Sophia. How did you find us? I asked. Elena, he said simply. She found me after Victor died. Said Clara left me something, a box. He took it out of his bag and put it on the table. There were pictures I had never seen before, like Clara as a girl laughing on the beach, Sophia as a little girl chasing butterflies, and one of Louis Daniel and Clara with their arms around each other, young and whole. In Clara's handwriting on the back, it says, family isn't blood, it's who stays. For 3 days, Daniel stayed. He helped us fix the roof that was leaking and told Isabel stories about Clara's childhood, like how she would climb trees, argue with teachers, and sing off Key in the shower. He stood with me in the garden on his last night under a sky full of stars. I hated myself for leaving for 20 years, he said. But seeing this place is seeing her live on in you too. Maybe it's not too late to fix things. He left the next morning, but not before putting a small tree in the corner of the garden. He said, an oak. For strength, the summer got deeper. A lot of kids came to the shelter, some for a night and some for months. They all had stories to tell, and they slowly and gently started to do so. Every day, Leela drew pictures. A woman with dark hair holding a baby in front of a house with a red door is always the same. Isabel told me one night while Leela was coloring, that's Clara. She dreams about her. Why? Isabel said softly, because Clara saved her mother before she was even born. I talk to Clara more now, not just in my head, but out loud. Like she was sitting next to me on the porch swing. I would say, the roses are blooming. Isabel got into the art program. Matteo said his first full sentence today. It wasn't crazy. It was thanks. Then on a rainy afternoon, I found out the last secret. I found a loose brick while cleaning the cellar by moving a stack of old crates. There was a small metal box behind it that was rusted shut. I used a screwdriver to pry it open. There was one key and a note inside. If you're reading this, you've already done what I couldn't do. You made my pain into something useful. This key unlocks the vault on the Victor Hales estate. The master code or the original Project Dawn data is inside. Get rid of it. And then Louis, live for real. That night, I showed it to Isabel. She didn't think twice. We're going tomorrow. The vault was deep underground, under what is now an empty winery. The air was cold and clean. The servers in rows hummed softly and blinked with information that could change the course of history. Isabel plugged in a drive and typed quickly on the keyboard. I'm writing down the names first. They tried it on every child. Then I'll clean it up. I stood guard while she worked, my heart racing. But no one showed up. The ravens were really gone. Isabel turned to me with tears in her eyes after the last file was copied and the servers were turned off. It's done. I nodded. It's done. At dawn, we set fire to the servers in the field. The flames lit up the sky like a promise. Isabel rested her head against the window on the way home. She was tired but calm. I used to think I was just a copy, she said in a low voice, a shadow of someone else's life. But now I see it in a new light. How? I'm not going to take her place. I am her continuation. That's all you need. That night, we sat in the garden and watched the new oak tree sway in the wind. The windows of the shelter shone with warm light. The sound of kids laughing filled the air. I shut my eyes and said to the wind, "Thank you, Clara." And for the first time, I didn't wait for a response. I already knew it was there in every healed heart, every flower that bloomed, and every second chance that grew in the soil she had watered with her tears. That year, fall came with a calm kind of grace. The leaves turned gold and red, and they fell like embers around the house. The air smelled like apples and wood smoke. Isabel had begun teaching art classes at the shelter, and the walls were now covered in children's drawings, bright, messy, and full of hope. I found it one afternoon while going through an old trunk in the attic. There was a picture I had never seen before hidden between yellowed sheets of music and a broken metronome. It showed Clara sitting on the porch swing of this house. She was older, tired, and smiling. Next to her was a young woman with long, dark hair and eyes that were too sad. And the woman was holding a baby. I couldn't breathe. In Clara's handwriting on the back, Olina and Sophia, October 1992, the last time we were all there. Sophia, the baby who died in the official records, is not the same one. Not the spirit of a life that was 3 months old. This baby looked like it was at least 6 months old. Elena, Victor Hale's sister, was holding her like she was the most important thing in the world. I called Isabel down right away. She looked at the picture for a long time, running her fingers over Elena's face. She wasn't just an enemy, Isabel said quietly. She was like family. That night, we dug deeper and pulled out every file, journal, and hidden note we could find. And bit by bit, the truth came out, not as a betrayal, but as a rescue. Elena had not been faithful to the ravens. She had been working against them from the inside. Elena snuck Sophia out of the lab and took her to Clara when she got sick from the serum Victor had forced into her body. They stayed in a cabin in the mountains for 3 weeks, taking care of Sophia until she got better. But the harm had already been done. The serum had changed her DNA. She wouldn't live for more than 3 years. Clara made a decision. She let people think that Sophia died when she was a baby. She put an empty coffin in the ground. She broke off all ties with everyone, even her brother, so that no one could use Sophia's survival as a bargaining chip. What about Elena? She stayed with the ravens and played the loyal sister so she could keep an eye on Clara from the shadows. The next morning, I drove to the city. Elena lived in a small apartment above a bookstore, far from the world of wealth and power she used to live in. She opened the door, surprised but not scared. She said, "You found the picture." I nodded. "Why didn't you tell us?" Well, she moved to the side and let me in. There were books on the walls, but one shelf only had pictures of Sophia. There were pictures of her at 4 months, 6 months, and 2 years old, laughing in a sunny field. Elena said, "Because Clara made me promise," as she poured tea with steady hands. She said that if anyone found out Sophia was alive, even for a short time, the ravens would never stop looking for her. And after Sophia, she couldn't lose anyone else. Then she looked at me, her eyes shining. "Luis, you were her second chance, and she loved you more than she ever let herself say." We talked for a long time. Elena told me stories about Sophia's first steps, how much she loved strawberries, and how she would hum Clara's lullabies to sleep. Elena said softly, she knew she was sick, but she never shed a tear. She would say, "Mama's sad. I have to be strong for her." Clara didn't bury Sophia in a cemetery when she died. She planted a white birch tree over her daughter's grave in the mountains. The bark was smooth and pale, just like her daughter's skin. Elena said, I come every year on her birthday. I finally asked the question that had been bothering me since the start. Why did she marry me? Elena smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because you saw her not the widow, not the warrior, not the woman who was broken by grief. You saw Clara, and you still loved her. That night, I went home with a new understanding. Clara didn't lie to hurt me. She had lied to keep the fragile peace she had made around a memory of her daughter. And by doing that, she gave me a gift I didn't know I needed, a love that chose me even when she thought she didn't deserve it. I took Isabel to Sophia's tree that night. She said, "We should go, everyone." The 2 weeks later, on a clear November morning, we stood under the white birch tree in the mountains. The kids from the shelter, Mateo, Lila, and the others also came. Each one had a small stone with the word brave painted on it, adored, remembered. We put them at the bottom of the tree. Isabel knelt down and put her hand on the bark. "Sophia," she said in a low voice, "I'm your sister. In spirit, if not in blood." The wind rustled the golden leaves above us as I stood next to her. I thought for a long time that Clara's secret was a wall between us. But now I saw it for what it really was, a bridge. A link between sorrow and grace. In the space between loss and legacy, between the love of a mother and the family she made from the things that were left behind. Isabel leaned her head against the window on the way home and was quiet for a long time. After that, she asked, "Do you think she's watching us?" I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the kids in the backseat laughing at a joke they all knew. "Yes," I said, "I think she's been watching the whole time." And for the first time, it didn't feel like a chore. It seemed like a gift. The land was quiet and still as winter came. Snow fell gently on the roof of Montenegro Manor, covering the garden in white and making the world quiet. The shelter was alive with activity kids. Voices echoed through the halls. The smell of cinnamon and bread wafted from the kitchen, and the fireplace crackled in the main room where Isabel read stories every night. I sat at the old desk in the study, the one Clara had used for years to write letters she never sent, plot rescues no one knew about, and carry the weight of a world that wanted her to be quiet. Now, it held different things: grant applications, lesson plans for Isabel's art classes, and thank you notes from parents whose kids had found safety here. Things had changed in the house. Not in its bones, which were still old and scarred, but in its breath. It didn't sigh with secrets anymore. It sang to heal. A letter came while I was shoveling snow off the porch one morning. Not by email or courier, but by hand, slipped under the gate. There is no return address, just my name written in a way that is easy to read. Elena. There was only one piece of paper and a small velvet pouch inside. The note said, "Clara left this for you. She told me to give it to you only when the house stopped being a grave and became a home. I believe that time has come." My hands shook as I opened the pouch. There was a ring inside. This ring was silver, delicate, and had only one sapphire on it. It was not a wedding band. Inside, in tiny letters, it said, "For the man who loved me when I forgot how to love myself." I turned it over, and my tears made it hard to see. She had it made. She had this gift for me all those years, waiting for a day that she wasn't sure would ever come. I showed it to Isabel that night. She held it carefully, as if it might break in her hands. "She knew," she said in a soft voice. "She knew you would stay, no matter what happened." I put the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. I took it to the garden the next day. I knelt down under the white birch tree, which was Sophia's grave, and pressed the ring into the frozen ground. "I don't need to wear it," I said softly. I already have her with me." The wind moved the branches above me as I stood there, and for a moment, the snowflakes looked like they were dancing in a circle around me, like a hug from someone who had died but would never be forgotten. Weeks went by. The shelter got bigger. There were more kids. In these rooms that used to be full of sadness, more lives were put back together. One night, while I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset turn the snow pink and gold, Isabel came out with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Do you ever miss her? She asked, not looking at me, but at the horizon. Every day, I said. But not the same way I used to. I miss the woman I thought I knew before. Now, I miss her honesty, the power, the hurt. The love was so strong that it had to hide to stay alive. Isabel smiled. She'd be proud of us. I said, yes, she would. That night, I dreamed about Clara again. But this time, she wasn't in a garden or holding a baby. She was sitting right here on this porch, wrapped in the same wool blanket she always used in the winter. She looked at me with clear eyes and a soft smile. You did it? She said. I said, we did it? She reached out and touched my hand. It was warm, real, and alive in the dream. Tell them my story, she said softly, not the secret. That love doesn't have to be perfect to be real, that you don't have to be quiet about your grief to honor it, and that a house can once again become a home. Then she faded, but not into darkness. She faded into light. The first rays of dawn were spilling over the hills when I woke up. I walked through the house, room by room, without making a sound. The attic, where Sophia's mural still kept an eye on us. The secret room, which is now empty but calm. The kitchen, where Clara used to cry by herself. The garden, where lilies would bloom again in the spring. This house had been through so much pain, but now it had even more love. I went to the study and got a new notebook. I wrote at the top of the first page, my wife died to keep a secret up, but what she really kept safe was hope. And I started to write, not for fame, not for answers, but for the kids who needed to know that even the worst wounds can heal, for the mothers who are sad but don't say anything, for the guys who love women they don't really get but love anyway, and for Clara, so the world would finally know her as a woman who loved so deeply that she was willing to be misunderstood for the rest of her life just to keep one more child safe. Not as a widow, a spy, or a liar. The snow started to melt outside, and roots moved somewhere deep in the ground, waiting, growing. Remembering